when my mother died after, threatening to for years. I mean, just flop like an opera singer, doing lots of farewells, and and uh, uh, and I think she might have stayed alive for my father, really, because he looked after her and gave his life direction and meaning. But anyway, my sister's a very practical person, and she just started clearing everything out of the house, And I flew out and arrived and went in, and then she's carrying out this like big boxes full of my mother's shoes. And my mother, like many people, like Anderson Cooper's father's belts. My mother had all these shoes that, probably more than she needed, but they you accumulate. I noticed that myself. I have more shoes than I actually wear. I didn't throw out that pair of boots because I kind of liked them, but I don't actually wear them. That sort of thing. And maybe I'll live in snow country one day and I'll need them. So my mother had all these shoes, and some of them were, they were kind of nice, and some of them were comfortable, and some of them were like that. And so my sister's carrying them out, and then and the next morning I saw they were back in the house, and I said, oh, I was just jolly off. Maybe I didn't see her carrying them out or something. And so she carried them out again. And the next morning they were back in the house again. And my father had been getting up after we were in bed and bringing them back in. And, I left it between them. The obvious thing to say was, I don't think he wants to get rid of the shoes. But I left it between them. And they too had a long relationship. So the symbolic things, are interesting, of what those little things, sometimes they're really a beautiful thing themselves, in that, a cup somebody's given, or something you inherited, or something like that. But really, the inheritance is, it's in our hands, it's in our it's in our hearts, and I think in some way it's something we can rely on, whether whatever the surface of our connection was. It was difficult. Nobody thought my mother was easy, or my father for that matter, actually, but certainly my mother. And but she's with me. They're with me sometimes if I need someone. My father's tough. He'll be with me. He was a good fighter, but also he had a kind of gravitas to him, And I dream him. So occasionally I've dreamed him with Mara or Hades, the Lord of Death. When I got cancer, I told my psyche was trying to work out death, and I had conversations in my dreams with the Lord of Death, which was sort of, I don't think it impressed the Lord of Death, but I was kind of thrilled to have a chat. I've been wanting to talk to you for so long, and it was sort of moving, and I realized that dignity, not just the sense of like loss, but the dignity and wealth, the idea that the Lord of Death is wealth, and also one of the Greek terms was the one for him was the one who receives so many. So it was a welcoming, a sort of host sort of thing, and so the dreams had that quality. But my father, like he could hold his own in that world. He could have a conversation with the Lord of Death too, So that was nice to know. So. And then I couldn't find any photos of him, but I had one online, and the only photo I could have of him is up on the top. I don't think you can see it very well, but I just printed it and tore it off. But he's holding kittens. He's a young man holding kittens. So very much, well, that's the image that came up, It's kind of nice. So you get those, the little, I think when we come to the question of ancestors and so on, they're the little symbolic things, the father's belts or whatever, mother's shoes or whatever. Or I remember my father actually went the other way. One of the last times I saw him, he said, "Could you give me something of yours?" And I said, "Okay, what would you like? And he said, oh, well, just something that you've handled and looked at every day and things like that. So I had a travel clock with him and I gave it to him, and so on. So the ancestral thing can go both ways. He wanted something that had a sort of my paw prints on it, I suppose, that my psyche was connected to. So we have that thing goes on, and that just realizing that sort of stuff is meeting life, just acknowledging those connections as meeting life, and